Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello everyone, welcome to SciTech Culture, the podcast where we discuss all things science, technology and culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone out there in STC land. It's good to be here. And, Ben, thank you very much for the gift of a USB mic.
Oh, I thought you could use one, and they're always useful, those things. And I have to recommend those to anyone who might be watching that these things aren't necessarily, really expensive like they were in the good old days where you probably had to spend thousands just to get a proper radio voice. Now you can just pop down to, in our case, JB Hi-Fi. They sell a lot of good stuff. Not that this is a commercial or anything, but you can get a lot of really good recording material and hardware now. It's quite amazing, isn't it? That all of this is just so readily available.
You can say that again. I've picked up a lot of great things there, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, just before we get it, well, we're talking about digital disruption, actually, digital technology. See, like what we're doing right now could only have been done by, I don't know, at a news desk maybe 30 years ago.
News desk, radio studio, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and now it's such an easy thing for us to do. But before we talk about the digital disruption, just wanted to touch quickly on, because we are going to still touch on Trump a little bit. It's been the flavor of the month for us, I guess. And although it'll come up again when we talk about the digital disruption side of things, I just had to touch on this story that came out in the last day or so about Sean Spicer blocking all of Trump's favorite news outlets from the White House gaggle and press briefing, and that setting off another round of hollering and screaming and all of that sort of thing from CNN, New York Times, and all those guys. I think the LA Times and Politico were blocked as well, all the ones that have been running critiques, the ones that have drawn Trump's ire, and of course the inevitable discussion about it being this is the way dictators get started, yada, yada, yada. And I think we were just talking about this before we got on. Obviously that rhetoric is not good because you don't want to be seen to be blocking the media as a politician because, again, that there is historic precedence for how others have done that in the past and it hasn't turned out too well. But there's another aspect to this about him using this as a distraction for other things that he's doing. So, and like I said before we got on, maybe this is just to deflect attention from the fact that, his new travel ban is coming out soon. And if he doesn't want people looking at it too closely, then the best way to do it is to, say something outrageous to get people hollering over here, and then they're not paying attention to what's going on over there. But I think the jury's still out about, is he doing that deliberately? How deliberate is it? Or is it all by accident? Or what? There's a very big question mark around all of that, I think, because it's not as if he's like an authoritarian figure from the past who it was clear that that's what they were doing, because he really is just running his own agenda.
Well, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Ben. He's running his own agenda. How well informed that agenda is debatable, but there's no question at all that his whole game is distraction, disruption, and then just carrying out his agenda, which is really just business outcome focused. So anyway, I think that he's probably got the better of the media in this case. They haven't established anything more. I mean, people hate Trump, I guess, or that's their message as much as they have for the last 6, 8, 12 months. It's not as if it's increased or decreased. They just keep reporting the same thing. So I think it's time for them to maybe reveal his motives rather than just run a diatribe against him.
And get a bit smarter about the way they cover him, because he definitely has the upper hand in terms of playing them, if anything in the last week is anything to go by.
Well, that's right, yes. I mean, but that's maybe where the debate should be. Is he smart enough to game the media, or is he just disrupting the media? Either way, it's working to his advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, just we'll stay on Trump just for a little bit so we can transition into our digital disruption topic, which is he ran on a platform of, make America great again, which was, and as part of that, he spoke to areas of America that had been affected by the job losses in manufacturing, and that he would be able to bring those jobs back. Now, as a counterpoint, Mark Cuban, another billionaire, who is a frequent critic of Trump, and there's a nice video I saw on YouTube of him being interviewed by Bloomberg, where he said, "Oh yeah, I give him some stick, he gives me some stick, and we all get along nicely or whatever." But then he would also say, that it's furphy to think that these manufacturing jobs are coming back. He said they're not coming back. It's not the fault of Mexicans and the Chinese or anything like that. It's because of digital technology disrupting the way these types of jobs are done, and that it's all because of automation, robotics, etc., that these jobs are being lost, and why they won't come back, which seems to be not part of the Trump political narrative at the moment. And it could be interesting, dangerous perhaps, when the voter base sees that for what it is for real. If they finally realize that it's not, that he can't do anything about it, at least in terms of the long term. I don't know. What do you think about all that sort of thing, Steve? That it could go in a myriad of different ways if he doesn't play it that well.
Well, I think there's two separate bits to this, and you and I have talked for a long time about future of jobs or work, and there's probably, I think we still even have up online some pretty interesting discussions we've had about this from 2 or 3 years ago, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then the second part is well, if he doesn't achieve what he set out to achieve, which is more jobs for more Americans, will anyone care? I don't think he cares, to be honest. And I'm not sure actually anyone will notice. I don't expect him to get any voter backlash at all, to be honest. I just can't see it. There's just such hysteria about him being so bad consistently that it negates actually any bad things he does.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
Yeah,
but on the jobs front, I think this is precisely right. You won't get a resurgence in manufacturing in the way that you could possibly have imagined it in the past, because there aren't multitudes of production line jobs anymore. The factories don't need lights because robots can work in the dark, and effectively everything is becoming automated, and the Internet of Things, which will change our work and living environment with smart cities and those sorts of technologies as well, will radically change what we perceive as being work, and the sorts of jobs. So I think there'll be a whole new range of jobs for people, but they're not going to be anything like the traditional sorts of manufacturing and sort of production jobs.
And that may be something that the current generation will, and maybe even the previous one to an extent, will have trouble adapting to, because something that Cuban was pointing out was that the types of jobs coming maybe 10, 20, 30 years down the line are probably going to be more based around free and creative thinking, around inspiration, around how do we, in effect, the job is to be human, I guess. So I think that's what we were talking about before, rather than the job that's repetitious and doesn't require you to think once you've learned how to do it. That is a major shift, and not everyone necessarily will be able to make that shift. And it may only occur once you get a new generation coming through that has been brought up to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, in the way that the post-Second World War, people's ideals and beliefs and the mass production, which was sort of, I guess, learned through the military effort, changed society. This will happen again, and being human will be very much part of the future. I think the consumer model is broken. You know, owning a widget that was made in a factory has been replaced by owning an app. So, you know, that idea that, you know, consumer products, retail is paramount, I think that's a very old model. I think we will have more free time. I think as envisaged, I think originally by the sorts of futurists of the 1950s and 60s, I think that free time is finally coming. We were all told, of course, that by now we should only be working 8 to 16 hours a week and the rest of the time would be free time anyway because of machines and automation and artificial intelligence. Maybe that prediction was just out by a generation or so. I think, you know, it's quite clear that what machines won't be able to do, even with artificial intelligence, certainly not in the next 20 or 30 years, will really have the essence of being a human. And that doesn't mean being flesh and blood and, I don't know, doing what we're doing. It means thinking of things the way humans do. So, you know, subjects such as philosophy become a lot more important because we need to deal with ethics.
The liberal arts majors that Cuban says there'll be a demand for them. He said there's no hope for them now, but give it another 20 years, they might be in hot demand.
Absolutely, because the one thing that we do know that machines won't be able to do in the short term is think creatively. And they won't be able to deal with complex human issues like ethics or even logic and reasoning applied in a human environment. Machines may in 30 or 40 years be able to do these things, and then I don't know what any of us will be doing at that point, but hopefully by then the economy will have transitioned to a point where we're all living in suburban resorts and sipping pina coladas from 9 a.m. in the morning.
Sounds nice. I guess I just wanted to touch on now versus I think some of the earlier times that we might have spoken about this topic, is that there seems to be, it seems more like maybe it has started. I think when we were talking about it like a couple of years ago, I mean, it might have started, but I don't think there was a sense maybe that it had started as much, or maybe that, you know, that's more science fiction, it's more in the future. You can see how quickly things can turn around. I mean, I keep coming back to say, you know, like something like the iPhone and the way that's completely transformed computing. And the way, I mean, it's basically made computing gone mainstream, and anyone can have a very powerful device in their pocket. And the way you go about doing things is completely different. You know, you can't imagine, you know, Seinfeld working in today's world in the same way. I mean, he could probably do it, but it would be a very different show, so to speak.
Well, probably be a show all about apps.
Yeah, that's right. But it was only 10 years ago that the iPhone was announced. So it's really 10 years is not a long time. No. And it's really maybe the last 5 years that it really, or the power's really kicked in and people are really using these things. So if you extrapolate that out to things like automation, robotics and all of that sort of thing, we're not really going to be that far away from seeing the beginnings of real change in this regard, regardless of whether people are ready for it or not, or whether they like it or not.
Well, I think you're spot on, actually. That iPhone example is a fantastic example, 10 years. I mean, obviously there was, you know, there was the iPad around the same time, but let's take that. Well, if you go back, the iPod existed before that, but let's take the iPhone as that sort of benchmark. 10 years, look what it's done. If you look at it that way, then 5 years will see us with driverless cars on the road, and they'll be common, and they'll become more and more common. And I would expect that probably by 2030, you know, it's going to be as exciting to see a human driving a car as maybe today it is to see them driving a classic 1950s hot rod on the road. You know,
it'll be like an elite sport or something that you watch on TV or whatever.
You probably need to get a special license to drive. You know, like this is already happening, and I think we see the Internet of Things now as well. I mean, who would have believed, a few years ago when Amazon announced it, that they actually would be delivering their products by drone? And they are now. And they're just starting. But we know how rapidly these things can happen. So in another 4 or 5 years, you would expect it to be commonplace.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, we'll start to slowly wrap it up now. But it does suggest an era that will generate a lot of anxiety, and maybe the whole Trump thing is, aside from all the other rhetoric that he has, that on the economics of it, that's where a lot of he tapped into that anxiety. But whether he can obviously talk to what we've been talking about, but this transition is going to generate a fair amount of anxiety for a lot of people who may not be able to cope. But in the same token, it could be quite exciting to see where this goes and how our lives change as a result, and the types of work that we do and the types of engagement that we do.
Well, that's right. You can either really worry about this stuff or just throw yourself into it. I mean, it's funny, that people would be so concerned about where this might lead us, but not concerned about using their iPhone at all. It's one and the same. It's a natural progression. It's somewhere our society is going. What we need to do is take a greater interest in it. And maybe you're right. Maybe a lot of this hysteria around Trump is driven by the uncertainty that the modern world is forcing upon us. Things that we knew and things, especially economic models, that we've trusted and grown up with. And bearing in mind, they didn't really exist before the Second World War either. So, it's not as if things actually stay the same. They do change. And I think that we're in for another change now, but you've got to be positive about these things and hope they'll turn out for the better.
Yeah, and that's a good point to finish up on. So, all right. So don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. I'd love to hear from you. So subscribe to all our channels. I never get that word right. YouTube, etc. We've got all of our videos there. And if you think anyone's interested in these discussions that Steve and I have on a regular basis, feel free to send them to our website. We'd greatly appreciate that. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.